As soon as we have enough members to make a motion and do that. On the consent calendar is Bill 1677 by Caballero, Assembly Bill 1995 by Mr. Gaines, Assembly Bill 2351 by Assemblymember Chesbro. Excuse me, not that, scratch that, not 2351, that's not on the consent calendar. But what is on the consent calendar is file item 7, AB 2409 by Mr. Nestandi. And number 9, Assembly Bill 2761. It's a committee bill. So those four will be on consent. We will be hearing the three Chesbro bills around 11:45, hopefully this morning. And we'll go ahead and start with Assemblymember Monning. You have two bills. Condors and tidelands, not necessarily linked together. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you, members. Thank you for this opportunity to present AB 1956 on condor feeding sites. The California condor is listed as a federal and state endangered species and only eats the remains of dead animals. Livestock operations have provided a food source for free-ranging condors for hundreds of years. AB 1956 authorizes the Department of Fish and Game to enter into an MOU for the purposes of allowing feeding of free-range condors to assist in recovery efforts. If the department chooses to do an MOU, then they would need to consult with the state veterinarian and work with federal agencies. Currently, the department is renewing its MOU with organizations to recover the California condor to the wild. AB 1956 also exempts the department when providing food for free-ranging condors from provisions of existing law otherwise prohibiting the transport of dead animals. This bill seeks to ensure a safe and reliable food supply for the condor in the long term, while also fostering additional collaboration to recover this species to the wild and within the control of the government entities working to save the condor. I have Kelly Sorensen, Executive Director with the Ventana Wildlife Society, here to testify in support of AB 1956. I would ask for your aye vote, and Madam Chair, if it's all right, I'd like to present Mr. Sorensen as a witness in support.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senators. I want to just share a little bit about how this came to be for us. And again, my name is Kelly Sorensen, Executive Director of Ventana Wildlife Society. We've been reintroducing California condors now for 13 years. And this whole time we've been using the placement of food as a key tool authorized by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to get these young birds habituated to the wild, because when they're first released, they're young and they have no parents and they otherwise would not survive. Still today, this tool is critically important, mostly because of the threat of lead poisoning from spent ammunition. So we must, in my opinion, continue this practice. And I just want to echo a couple of things here. I think this bill is mostly about making state law consistent with federal law and giving some mention of the needs that the California condor has in our state law, and that this is ongoing. That Department of Fish and Game is in the process of renewing MOUs, so it's good timing. It doesn't require the Department of Fish and Game to do anything, but rather gives them an opportunity to participate in this meaningful way. So with that, I just want to thank you for your consideration and urge you to vote in favor.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify in support of this measure? Any opposition? Seeing and hearing none, I'll open it up to questions or comments or a motion from members of the committee. There's been a motion by Senator Wolk. Condors are scavengers, as we know, and so it's the difference in regulation between U.S. Fish and Wildlife and Fish and Game that creates the problem. And the Ventana Wilderness is Monterey County Mountains, for those of us from Southern California.
Yes, it is. Ventana Wilderness is located in Monterey County, primarily in Big Sur. That's where my organization first got started releasing the condors to the wild.
Okay. And we have a few down in the Sespe area near where I am.
Absolutely.
All right. There has been a motion, and we do have a quorum. So before we call the roll call, please, to establish a quorum.
Senators Pavley,
Here.
Cogdill, Hollingsworth, Huff, Kehoe, Lowenthal, Padilla, Semidian, Wolk.
Okay. There's no opposition to this bill, and there is a motion made. We do have a quorum. Roll call to support this bill, and it would move on to Appropriations Committee. Roll call, please.
Senators Pavley,
Aye.
Pavley, aye. Cogdill, Cogdill, aye. Hollingsworth, Huff, Huff, aye. Kehoe, Lowenthal, Padilla, Padilla, aye. Semidian, and Wolk.
Aye.
Wolk, aye.
It has sufficient votes if you want to hold it open.
Okay. It has sufficient votes to get out of committee. We'll hold it open to at least noon to see if other members wish to add on. And let's move along to file item 5, Assembly Bill 2179. It's regarding tidelines and submerged lands for the city of Santa Cruz and city of Long Beach. Sounds like a state lands commission issue. Please present.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members, AB 2179 transfers public trust lands from 2 land exchange agreements from the state to the cities of Santa Cruz and Long Beach. This bill codifies action already taken by the State Lands Commission. I believe is Mr. Mario DeBernardo from the State Lands Commission here. I understood he might be here in support. This is basically a technical adjustment. It has the full support of the local governments involved with this in collaboration with the state of California. I'd respectfully ask for your aye vote and would be glad to answer any questions if members have questions.
I do note in the analysis from members under support, State Lands Commission is the sponsor of the bill, and both the city of Santa Cruz and city of Long Beach are in support. There's been a motion to move the bill. Are there any questions? And the motion would be a do pass and on to appropriations. Is that correct? All right. Roll call, please.
Senators Pavley,
Aye.
Pavley, aye. Cogdill, Cogdill, aye. Hollingsworth, Huff, Huff, aye. Kehoe, Kehoe, aye. Lowenthal, Padilla, Padilla, aye. Semidian, Wolk.
It has sufficient votes.
Okay. Sufficient votes to get it out of committee, and we'll leave it open till at least noon. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members.
Yep. Members, while we wait for an author, we're going to move on to the consent calendar. There's 4 items on the consent calendar: Assembly Bill 1677, Assembly Bill 1995, Assembly Bill 2409, and Assembly Bill 2761. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? It's been moved by Senator Cogdill. Roll call, please.
Okay. Senators Pavley,
Aye.
Pavley, aye. Cogdill, Cogdill, aye. Hollingsworth, Huff, Huff, aye. Kehoe, Kehoe, aye. Lowenthal, Lowenthal, aye. Padilla, Padilla, aye. Semidian, Wolk, Wolk, aye.
Okay, we are waiting for Assembly Member Huffman.
He's at a meeting and we don't know how
When was the consent calendar for that?
We just did.
Sorry.
So let us open the roll while we wait for Assembly Member Huffman.
On number file item 2.
Starting with file item 2, we're reopening the roll for those members who wish to add on.
Yes.
Assembly Bill 1956 by Assembly Member Monning relating to the California condors and feeding.
Senators Hollingsworth, Kehoe,
File item 2.
Kehoe, aye. Lowenthal, Lowenthal, aye. Semidian.
That was item 2.
That was item 2.
7 if you want to keep it.
No, I'm going to close the roll.
Consent?
That item passes 7-0. We'll close the roll on that particular item. We're going to item 5 by Assemblymember Monning, Assembly Bill 2179, relating to tidelines and submerged lands, State Lands Commission, and has the support of both cities as well.
Senators Hollingsworth, Lowenthal, Lowenthal, aye. Semidian, Wolk,
Aye.
Wolk, aye.
That has 7 if you don't
It has 7 votes, passes 7-0. That item is closed and moves on to appropriations. Consent calendar for those who have not added on. Do we have everyone?
I just need Hollingsworth and submitting him so everybody's there.
I don't know. I think
When you walked in, that's what you were voting.
I voted on that. I walked in.
Okay, so everyone is covered on that? So it's 7-0.
Well, you know, K is before F.
Let's move Diane Colburn
Okay.
to present.
All right. The consent calendar is approved, and I'll go ahead and close the roll on that, where other members probably not be attending, and it passes 7-0. That's all 4 items on the consent calendar. And with no objections, Assemblymember Huffman would like Diane Colburn from his staff to present on his behalf Assembly Bill 2063. Please come on down. About the Chinook salmon. And this item is dual referred to government organization. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Diane Colburn on behalf of Assemblyman Huffman, thank you. AB 2063 is a simple bill with an important purpose: to highlight the plight of California's beleaguered salmon runs and affirm the state's commitment to restoring healthy populations of this species. AB 2063 names the Chinook salmon as California's official state anadromous fish. As many of you know, Chinook salmon have for centuries been an integral part of California's environment, supporting tribal, commercial, and recreational fisheries, and serving as an economic, cultural, and ecologically vital resource for the people of the state. Salmon were, of course, first harvested commercially in California in the 1850s when they provided food for the gold rush, and at that time there were millions of salmon that thrived in our streams. Today, all of our Chinook salmon runs are in decline. Some are in imminent danger of extinction. The Central Valley Fall Run, which has been the backbone of the fishing industry for much of the North Pacific coast, declined 95% between 2002 and 2009, coming down from 750,000 fish to only 39,000 last year, which was an all-time record low. The salmon season was closed for 2 years in a row, in 2008 and 2009, and the economic impacts were very significant on the fishing industry and in particular Northern California communities. Although a very limited salmon season was allowed this year, there's reason to be cautious regarding what some believe are overly optimistic projections for returns next year. We hope that they prove to be correct. So this bill basically does 3 things. First, it declares Chinook salmon as the official state anadromous fish, and by doing so, we hope that it will help to educate the public about the importance of Chinook salmon for our environment, economy, and as a unique part of California's history and culture. Second, it declares a state goal to restore Chinook salmons to sustainable levels sufficient to support viable fisheries within a decade. And third, it calls upon the Department of Fish and Game to work collaboratively with other public and private partners in prioritizing efforts for restoration of salmon. The committee analysis suggests 2 amendments, which
Just going to ask you
which,
about
yes,
those.
they clarify the bill's findings and the scientific basis of the bill that the bill calls for, and we think those are both constructive suggestions, and the author is willing to accept those as amendments.
So we'll add those as author's amendments. Members, that's the bottom of page 3 in the committee analysis and the top of page 4.
And with that, we would just ask for your I vote. Any questions that you have? And I have
You
2
have
witnesses here.
Great.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Christopher Trinnell here on behalf of California Trout and Trout Unlimited, 2 organizations that are solely dedicated to the restoration of California's steelhead trout and salmon populations in California. We're very pleased to be here today in support of AB 2063 as the sponsors of the measure. California Trout and Trout Unlimited support this legislation for 3 central reasons. First, we need to increase public awareness of the precipitous decline in our inland and coastal fish species. An unfortunate 8 of California's 14 species of trout and salmon are either listed or potentially listed under the Federal Endangered Species Act. This is absolutely unacceptable. But it's also unacceptable that the vast majority of Californians aren't aware of this fact and aren't aware of the threats that their native Californian trout and salmon populations face. Second, we need to improve the way we spend our limited restoration dollars. The bill would reinvigorate interagency, public-private coordination to help maximize the impact of our limited fiscal resources as we go about attempting these restoration efforts. And third, we need to employ the best science available, without a doubt. The bill would encourage the Department of Fish and Game to use the salmon's unique life cycle as a guide for making those investments. As some of you may know, salmon rely on each region of our watersheds to complete their entire life cycle. The upper tributaries, the main river stems, the estuaries that connect fresh and the salt water in the ocean, and the oceans themselves. The challenges these fish face in each one of those unique areas are very different. Between those areas, and we need to have a better understanding of the connections between those areas and the connections between those challenges that they face, and this bill will help support that goal. We thank the author and the staff of this committee for their work on this measure, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Next witness.
Good morning, Chair and members. Melva Bigelow, here on behalf of the Nature Conservancy, and for more than 50 years we have worked with NGO and agency partners to protect salmon runs, upper trib, main stem, and out into the ocean. We are strong supporters of this of the Chinook salmon bill, and thank the author for his critical critical interest in this issue.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to testify in favor of this bill? Questions by member of the witnesses before I call forward opposition? All right. Thank you for your testimony. Anyone here wish to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 2063? Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Wendy Ritterbusch with the Association of California Water Agencies. Obviously, we don't oppose this bill in concept. Mother's apple pie, and coho and Chinook salmon, we support all of those. But basically, we have problems with specific language in the bill. We thought it was an excellent analysis by the consultant. Wanted to respond to 2 points. We understand that Chinook and coho salmon are not specifically or only located wholly within the Delta. So while it may not be wholly relevant here, we believe it's partially relevant, and relevant it is. It's an important part. I think everything in the issue of water is going to be filtered through the lens of the Delta Water Package, the historic package that was passed last year in the fall. That package was really designed to recover fish species in the Delta through co-equal goals. And so we feel that, that part of this piece of bill is just really not appropriate at this time. And then the other point that we made in our letter of opposition was that the decade time frame was may not be, really doable. And in the analysis, the consultant talks about, 3 generations are generally considered the minimum necessary. And I think basically when you talk about this bill, it talks about determining the state's progress in restoring populations. That's not what the language says. It says to reach sustainable levels in a decade period, not make progress towards sustainable levels. So we have real issues with that. We feel that those could have really real consequences. And so while we support the goal, we've seen many bills go from legislative intent to political intent to biological mandates, and we would hate to see that happen with this bill.
All right. Questions by members to anyone sitting before us? Senator Cogdill.
Thank you very much. Not so much a question, but pretty much, I guess, a statement that falls in line with the testimony of the last witness and concerns that I have relating to the bills that we passed last fall and the embracing of the co-equal goals and trying to make sure that everything we do from this point forward takes those into consideration and treats them equally. And I'm concerned about, again, some of the particulars and language of this bill. I don't have a problem with necessarily naming the Chinook salmon as the official state anadromous fish, or the efforts to try to improve our education outreach relating to the issues for salmon. But it's some of the fine points relating to regulations and requirements that are spelled out in this bill that cause me quite a bit of concern, and again, I think go contrary to what we did last fall, and I think that's really needs to be the hallmark as we move forward, as we analyze what I know will be a lot of different pieces of legislation over the years ahead to make sure that we are treating everything in light of the co-equal goals and giving those equal consideration. So.
And, Senator Huff.
Yeah, along those same lines, I have no problem with naming, the Chinook salmon as our state hydronomous fish. In looking at this, I do believe that we are introducing language, particularly when you're talking about the freshwater habitat, that includes a number of things there. Those are not included in state law now. This could be the slippery slope that we start, saying, well, we have to have that because now we've got it listed here in statute. I also don't see in the bill anything talking about the role of striped bass as far as reducing the populations out there, and that's not a native fish. So I think the intent of the bill is good. I think there's way too much detail for my comfort level, so without some changes, I certainly can't support it.
At this time. I would like to note for the record that this bill is dual referred to Senate Government Organization. Other members have comments. If not, you'll move the bill, and I want to allow time for the author to close and respond to any. Thank you. If there's no other questions, witnesses are excused.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair and members.
Excuse me. Witnesses are excused, and just the authors presenting. You're here.
Okay. Thank you.
Wendy, I don't think there's any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And just in a brief close, I would like to respond briefly to the comments that were raised. The author of the bill supports the co-equal goals that were articulated in last year's legislation. We don't think that, I guess we disagree that this bill in any way contradicts those co-equal goals. This bill is amending a section of the code that deals specifically with restoration of anadromous fish. We've not singled out water exports in the bill. And we think that this bill is appropriately dealing with restoration of salmon populations. We would also point out with regard to the 10-year decade that the bill is really just framed in terms of legislative intent and a goal. And goals are, we do our best efforts to achieve them, but we don't always achieve them, and we try our best to make progress toward the goal. So we appreciate those concerns raised, but would just ask for your aye vote.
Okay, thank you very much. When I read through these, sort of similar, I believe, to the author, I myself didn't feel that there was any conflict with the co-equal goals. The Chinook salmon obviously is not just in the Delta, but even if it was solely in the Delta, it's still not in conflict. Because when you look at page 2, the proposed law, and no one seems to have a problem with naming it as the state's hydronomous fish, it states a goal to recover the Chinook system. There's no targets, no requirements, no mandates, just a goal, and that's what the timeline and recovery process. And then the third part primarily is just asking for Fish and Game to collaborate with Fish and Game Commission to work together with other stakeholders to accomplish this goal, which seems to be very relevant and consistent with the co-equal goals of providing a reliable water supply and restoring the Delta ecosystem. So I'm going to be supporting this bill today, and I encourage members to do so as well. Senator Wilk, did you make a motion?
I did.
Any other comments? Roll call, please. And this would be a due pass and referred to government organization. It's due pass as amended.
Senators Pavley.
Aye.
Pavley, aye. Cogdill? No. Cogdill, no. Hollingsworth? Huff?
No.
Huff, no. Kehoe? Aye. Kehoe, aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Lowenthal, aye. Padilla? Aye. Padilla, aye. Simidian? Wilk? Aye. Wilk, aye. 4, 5, 5.
Thank you.
Okay. The vote is 5-2. That item passes. And we are waiting for. Okay. Yes, Assemblymember Chesbrough. We're just waiting for him. We can close the roll on that prior item at 5-2.
Yeah. Okay. That's out.
So Senator Chesbrough has 3 bills. And we have everyone here having already voted on all items, correct?
Yes.
What time is it?
It's 11:30 and 11. Is Wes in the building? 11:45 is like the earliest possible that he could be here.
He will be here at 11:45. Would you like to take a 15-minute recess?
15 minutes or 15 days?
Which one?
I vote for the second B. I think there's
Do people want to do that? Our second option is to put all three of his bills over to the next committee hearing, which is going to be a long one, but I'm willing to go any direction the committee would like to go. 15 minutes?
It's already been too long.
Is it on it, do you think, or is that more than he wants to do?
He has 3 items, so he's going to need to be here. Oh, one item I notice is a dual referred to environmental quality. So do we have 2 more meetings?
He hasn't asked about his
We'll do a 15-minute recess, and if you would notify his office that he should have staff be able to present at 11:45, even if he is not quite here yet. Because one of the items I noticed is dual referred, which means we need to hear it today. Oh, 15 minutes, come back at 11:45.